Models are constantly being released, and it's hard for people to keep up, including myself. Which models are best or which model should you pick for your tasks are common questions and concerns that I hear. Well, today we're going to be talking about the updated auto model selection and how it can help you with this exact problem and save you some money along the way. Now, before we talk about auto model selection, I wanted to kind of show you how crazy it can be with models being released. And so this is the GitHub changelog. And as you can see, I filtered the Copilot. And as of the recording today, which is August 7th, you'll see that on August 6th, we had Kimi K3 being available now. July 28th was Grok 4.5, Opus 5 on July 24th, Gemini 3.6 Flash on July 21st, and of course, OpenAI, GPT-5.6, Solterra, and Luna on July 9th. So just in the span of like 5 weeks or so, we have multiple models being released. So it can be very hard to keep up or test out all these different models. Now, auto model selection was updated and released on VS Code on May 20th, as you can see here, and also on the CLI on July 1st, as you can see on this changelog as well. It is, however, available across multiple surfaces. So it is generally available on Copilot Chat, on the GitHub website, VS Code, CLI, and the GitHub Copilot app. Now, if you noticed earlier, I mentioned updated, and if you saw some of these as well, it says improvement. And that is because Auto Model has been around for some time, actually. But previously, there's a section down here, Auto was optimized for model reliability and availability. So the intent back then was to help you reduce your rate limiting when selecting a model. Now, back then you also got a 10% discount for choosing auto, and that still applies today. So that is one way of how you can save cost. Today, it still leverages that rate limiting check and model reliability check, but on top of that, it also routes based on tasks. So it's matching the task to the model that can solve it the most efficiently. And that's the other way that it can also help you save cost. Here's an example of the pricing for models via GitHub Copilot. And as you can see here, GPT-5.4 Mini would cost $4.50 on the output, but GPT-5.5 would cost $30, or 5.4 is $22.50. So there's a big price difference, and that's some of the benefits of choosing these models. On the flip side, these models continue to grow even more powerful every single time, every single release. And so there are a lot of things that these lightweight models are very capable of. Using an extreme example, you don't need GPT-5.6 Sol to write a hello world, bash script as an example. Any one of these models, especially the lightweight ones, can absolutely handle that. And so that's kind of an extreme example, but you get the idea where picking those models can help save you costs and you get the exact same output. So instead of you having to figure out which model to pick, auto model selection helps you with that selection. Now, I do want to mention that there are a few things, a few caveats and things to be aware of. One is the cache. And so, actually, I should go back. The cache is another way that that GitHub does to save cost. And as you can see here, there's the input and a cached input. And so if I look at GPT-5.4, the input is $5, but once it's already received that input, it'll cache it, and that cached input is now only 50 cents. So maintaining that cache also saves cost. And from what the GitHub team have seen, it's better to use the same model and that cache, and you can actually get a similar output while saving cost. Now I say that, but this is actually a blog post where they actually run the numbers here. There is actually a task-aware routing, which is actually called Hydra, and there is a paper that describes it into more detail, which I will not be covering. But Hydra stands for Hybrid Dynamic Routing Architecture, and so that's the whole abstract and reasoning of how they how they got to this conclusion. There is, of course, many tests that they ran showing that you get similar output for far less cost, and that is the intent of this. Now, I mentioned the cache as well because of how you'll notice Copilot on auto behaves. And that is because there are a few areas of when auto will pick the model. And so it is heavily aware, cache aware. And so it will switch models, or actually it will choose the model at the very beginning when no model has been chosen yet and you are starting fresh, which makes sense. It will also potentially choose a new model if the cache has expired, because now you're not saving any money from the cache expiring. Cache expiration will vary by model. Some might be an hour, some might be longer. There is documentation on that, which I will link. And there's also compaction. Compaction is where GitHub Copilot compacts your conversation to compact the number of tokens being used in memory. And at that time, you also lose your cache. And that is another point where it may change the model that it chooses. Now, from my experience using Auto, I find that expiration and first turn are the most consistent. I find that it seems to stay within the model more often than not during compaction, even if I force compaction. So that's something to note. Now, to be fair, me forcing compaction early, it might still deem that, hey, you know, there's still enough context that, it feels that it's still worthy of using the same model. But just kind of sharing my experience that first turn and expiration seem to be the most common uh, routing that I've seen. Now, last thing I will mention before I go to the demo is that it will only support certain models. So as you can see here, supported AI models in auto model selection. This is the list of models, and these are the interfaces that it goes across. So as an example, Raptor Mini would only be on Copilot Chat, but it is not in the GitHub Copilot app. On the flip side, GPT-5 Mini is not on the Cloud Agent, but is on the other three. So this is a list of the models that are available. I imagine this will continue to grow as they test and see which ones are the best fit for auto. And I think that makes it convenient for me, which is why I've primarily been using auto myself for the majority of my requests. And then occasionally I will pick other models based on personal preferences, etc. But auto definitely has taken over as the majority of requests for me. Last thing I will mention is that if your organization or your enterprise blocks certain models, it will respect that too. So for example, if your organization blocked Sonnet 4.6, you will not see Sonnet 4.6 in auto anymore. So that is another nice feature to have as part of your um, your governance. All right. Without further ado, let's get started with the demo. This is a very short demo, but it's just kind of showing you how the routing happens. I'm going to be doing this in the GitHub Copilot CLI, but this of course works on VS Code or the app or the other interfaces that I mentioned. And so we're back in the Milefolio app. And if I do something simple, like tell me what does this app, tell me what this app does. And as you can see down here, I am on auto. Actually, before I do that, I can show you when you select model, you can either choose auto here or go to model and then select your actual model. But we will continue on with tell me what this app does. And it recognizes, oh, this seems like a fairly basic and simple request. I'm going to route it to Cloud Haiku 4.5. On the flip side, and I'm going to start a new session because if I were to try, and this is kind of the thing that I was mentioning, if you try to suddenly change, like if I now gave it an extremely complex request, it's not going to change because it has this information cached. And I find that you're better off starting new or forcing the model change. So in this case, I'm going to start new for the sake of the demo, and I have another request. We are seeing auto with no model selection there. In this case, I want to plan a new feature where we provide details of what the columns in my site mean so that when people hover over the column name, it will actually describe what it's doing. And when I do this, as you can see, it went to GPT-5.3 codecs. Now, if we go back here, we had Haiku earlier. Let's go back to the pricing model. Haiku costs $5 on output, $1 on input, and 5.3 codecs costs $1.75 on input, but 14 on the output. So as you can see, it did pick a more expensive model when we were starting to plan out some changes, 5.3 codecs versus Cloud Haiku 4.5 for the lightweight example there. Now, just to kind of show, if you're in VS Code, you can choose the model. You can choose auto, of course. It tells you auto routes based on your task and real-time system health, and you get that 10% discount as it shows there. And then if you're in the VS Code, or sorry, not VS Code, GitHub Copilot app, you can choose right here as well. You can pick auto, where you get 10% off the model cost. And then once you untoggle it, that's where you get your list of models there. So this is auto model selection, where it helps you pick the right model for the task and helping you save some credits along the way. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. Thanks for stopping by.